The dust of the frontier town carried a hunger of its own, dry winds biting at empty stomachs, turning each day into a battle for survival. Among the worn faces in the marketplace walked Elena, her eyes tired, her clothes threadbare, her hands clutching the last thing she owned that carried meaning, a delicate gold ring that had once belonged to her mother. She pressed it in her palm as though it could still hold warmth, though she knew she could no longer keep it. Hunger had no patience for sentiment. The stalls brimmed with goods, bread hard as stone but smelling like salvation, apples bruised yet glistening like jewels. She stepped toward one vendor, voice trembling as she offered, "Please, take this ring, just a loaf, just enough to quiet the pain in my belly." The merchant squinted at the gold. He weighed it in his palm but shook his head. "Gold doesn't fill my cart, not out here. Out here we need work, hands that labor, not jewelry that shines. Try somewhere else." Her chest caved. She stumbled from stall to stall, begging, pleading, offering the ring to anyone who might show mercy. But in this small ranching town, survival ran on sweat, not wealth. Jewelry was useless when cattle needed tending, when fences broke, when storms stripped roofs bare. By dusk, Elena's legs gave out near the edge of a dusty ranch road. She sank to her knees, staring at the ring. Her lips cracked as she whispered, "Mama, even your gift cannot feed me." That's when a voice spoke behind her. Gentle, steady, carrying a note of strength she hadn't heard all day. "We're trying to trade gold for bread?" She turned. A young man stood there, broad-shouldered from ranch work, dust smeared across his shirt, a coil of rope slung at his side. His gaze was direct but kind. He glanced at the ring in her hand, then back at her hollow cheeks. "Gold isn't what we need out here," he said quietly, kneeling to meet her eyes. You are." Those words struck deeper than the hunger clawing her stomach. For the first time in days, someone wasn't seeing her as a beggar, but as a person. Elena blinked, her throat tightening. What do you mean?" The rancher's son extended his hand. "Come. My father runs the ranch down this road. We don't need gold. We need hands that care, hearts that don't give up. If you're willing to work, you'll never go hungry again." Her fingers trembled around the ring, the last tie to her old life. But as she looked at his outstretched hand, she realized. Perhaps this was what her mother had meant when she told her. Gold is not the treasure. You are. Elena slipped the ring back onto her finger and placed her other hand in his, and just like that, her story began again. The ranch was a living beast. Cattle lowing across the plains, fences stretching like ribs against the horizon, the scent of leather and hay thick in the air. Elena worked until her muscles screamed, hauling water, mending posts, gathering eggs, learning each task with determination that surprised even herself. The rancher's son, Caleb, watched her from a distance at first, testing her grit, but soon he saw something beyond hunger driving her. A fire, a refusal to be broken, even when her hands blistered and her back ached. At night, when the prairie stars lit the sky, she would sit on the porch steps, holding the ring between her fingers. Caleb would join her sometimes, silent at first, and speaking of his mother who had passed, his father's fading strength, the burden of holding the ranch together. "Most people see dust and cattle," he said one night. But you see worth where others see waste. You remind me of why this place matters." Elena swallowed hard. "I thought the ring was my last worth. But maybe. Worth is something we carry inside, something we give to others." Weeks turned to months. The ranch began to thrive again, not just from Elena's work, but from her presence. She encouraged the workers when storms flattened their fences. She sang while milking the cows. She found joy in the smallest victories. One evening, the town merchant, the very one who refused her ring, rode up the ranch road. He looked at her in surprise, strong and standing tall now. Caleb stood at her side. "I see now," the merchant admitted. "I turned away gold, but you were the real treasure all along." Caleb smiled at her then, the same smile he'd worn that first day. "I told you, gold isn't what we need, you are." Tears filled her eyes, not of sorrow this time, but of belonging. She had found not only food, but a family, a purpose, and perhaps something even greater blooming quietly between her and Caleb. The ring that once symbolized her past now gleamed as a promise of her future, not because it was gold, but because she had discovered her true worth.